Hello and welcome to Breaking the Cycle. My name is Alan Hyde, and tonight we are joined by a special guest, Cassandra Holt Kimbell, licensed professional counselor in the state of Texas and LPC, licensed professional counselor supervisor for the state of California. Cassandra, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's good to have you here tonight. We're going to get into all of your specialties and backgrounds. But you were telling us before the show started, we're having a conversation with our producer, Kendra.
Hey, Kendra.
Hello, Kendra. That you work with neurodivergence, that you're passionate about working with late diagnostics for ADHD, working with females in these realms. And I think it's going to be really informative for our viewers to get an expert's breakdown on what some of these things are, what the distinguishing factors are, because there's a lot of chatter online and it's not always correct.
Yes.
Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with how you kind of got into all this, and then we'll go from there?
Yeah. So I started as a sped teacher, and the kids would kind of pull me out in the hall, and they're like, "Miss, I need to talk," and then it just kept being more and more. And so I started with a master's in school counseling, and then they were like, "Hey, if you take 6 more classes, you can take the test to be an LPC." I had no idea what that was. Right. I was like, "Sure, I'll do it." Fast forward, we moved to California to work on music, and I started my internship out there. I was like, oh yeah, that thing that I took the test for. And I fell in love with mental health. I really valued the internship that I did there. I am business partners with one of the ladies that went through the internship with me, and I just, when I started my company, backtrack. My dad got sick, and I ended up having to come back to Texas, which I don't regret, coming back and spending that time with him at all. But it forced me to quit the job that I was doing at that time. And I remember being like, okay, I'm going to be homeless, or this is going to be great. It's one or the other. And people started finding me that were women that thought they were autistic. I just advertised myself as I work with creatives.
Yeah.
And I don't know how. I guess the universe was like, here you go. Here's who you're supposed to work with. Almost my whole caseload is they're neurodivergent in some way.
Yeah.
That was probably an over-explanation.
No, not at all. I mean, we want our viewers to be able to get to know you, especially because we're going to get into some information, and it always helps to have the background of our guests here. But it's funny, one of the things that oftentimes I chat with other therapists about is how your clientele finds you, right? It's like your higher power has a sense of humor.
I am late diagnosed. I didn't even go get tested until last year because I was testing other people, and typically the experiences I've heard, people shared that they're like, hey, I went and got tested. It was horrible. They just shoved these scantrons at me across the table. I felt judged, and just story after story after story. And so they kept asking me hey, can you test me? And I'm like, no, I can't. So then I was like, wait, can I? And so I started researching, and in Texas and in California, you can at a master's level. And if nobody knows that, you can.
Yeah.
And so I got trained, and then as I'm reading the questions, most people give them the Scantron, I read them out loud because I wait for the context and I wait for the facial expressions. Neurotypical people, I don't know if you are neurotypical or neurodivergent, but
I've never been assessed.
There you go. Neurotypical people don't tend to ask 5,000 questions needing context, or having a struggle with a question do you like to spend time alone more than going to parties? A neurotypical person usually answers yes or no. We are I don't know who's going to be at the party. What are we drinking at the party? Who's how am I getting home? What kind of music's going to be at the party? But I can make a joke out of it, but they struggle. You can see it on their face. And so I'm making notes the whole time while I'm filling it in too, of the pieces that they don't ask for in the test.
Yeah. And then there, I imagine, is a rubric, right, that determines the levels, 1, 2, and 3, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. And I am level 1, so I'm ADHD. I have ADHD and then autism level 1. And she almost missed me like when I went and got tested, but I was privileged enough to have the language to be able to describe like this is what I struggle with. Like I mask really well but it is hard, and sometimes there's moments that are debilitating. And there's this movement, and I'm not going to name any names so I don't get sued, but I'm just like super annoyed with this cute little umbrella they keep putting out that's like, everybody's neurodiverse. No, they're not. Like, if you're doing an AIDS fundraiser and somebody shows up and they're like, everybody has a little AIDS, like, I know that's a terrible comparison, but like, that's what it feels like. And it's silencing, like, we're just now being able to like talk about our diagnosis and people not think like, oh, you're Rain Man or you're like so intellectually disabled that you can't function. Like that's been what people think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Institutionalized versus functioning in society. And even within that spectrum, this is where I think a lot of people check out of the conversation, where there are a lot of distinctions, and I don't know if it's so much that people don't want to know about it. I think they just kind of hear it and they're like, let me just put it in a nice little box. But that's the beauty of a show like this. We get to discuss the differences and educate for those who are willing to listen. So we hear terms in society, if we're just to bring it down to like the population level of autism, Down syndrome, spectrum. Why don't we define a few of these things and talk a little bit about the differences, since you see it so consistently with your work, and we can impart them with some information on it. So why don't we start with some of the differences between some of these terms that we hear?
Yeah. So neurodivergence, and I wish I had brought like a visual. It's autism, ADHD, it is dyslexia, dysgraphia. It is a neurological difference. So like, no matter, there's not a medication I could take and not be autistic. I can learn some coping skills that help me to be able to function better. And now that I'm like older, I definitely like set boundaries for myself of like, okay, if I go hang out on a Saturday or I do a show, I'm going to need like a day or two where sometimes I may be nonverbal. And I've gotten a lot of like, well, you don't look autistic. And, or they're like, but you're smart. And it's like, it has nothing to do with intelligence.
Right.
Yeah, it is sensory overload. Living in apartments my whole life, like we just now were able to get a house, and it has been life-changing for me on a lot of levels, because like noises, consistent noises get me to a level where I want to fight you. And like my mom was like, how come every apartment complex you got a problem with somebody? And I'm like, it's not just me, but it is actually. Like, it's when you're neurodivergent, consistent sounds, like if you were tapping like this next to me, it's going to get louder and it's going to intensify. Whereas if you're neurotypical, it tends to fade into the background. And so it's like little things like that that we never talked about. Whereas like level 2, then you may be getting into like some like not being able to hold down a job. And when you break it down, it's for a lot of reasons. It could be that there's too much system overload, or it could be that like a lot of what I hear people struggle with is they get in trouble at work with their bosses because they were told they were disrespectful for asking too many questions. And level 3, you're getting into nonverbal, you're getting into like maybe parents as caretakers, like the extremes that people think about.
Yeah, and there was a distinction too when we come back to the base of what you were explaining with neurodivergence. I think it's important to make the connection here that ADHD fits in this realm of what we're talking about. These are the neurological diagnoses when you open up the DSM, and they're in that section, right? And they're pretty significant criteria, clusters of symptoms. But the point that I was hearing in one of the aspects you shared was, this isn't affecting everybody.
No.
And I think it's important to make that distinction, because you and I would probably both agree on this, is like there's a real movement to kind of start to slot and lump everybody into these places, which almost discredits what's going to be effective. You know, like where the treatments for those who are actually struggling come from and how to target them. Because if everybody just struggles with it, that's a problem.
I made a comparison online, and it was, I guess, not a good comparison, but in my head it made sense. It's like when the Black Lives Matter movement started, and then here come the All Lives Matter people to try to silence those Black voices. I know it's not the same thing, but that is a comparison with some of these certain movements of like, because I got yelled at, told I was the problem because I was just trying to explain the difference in diagnostics. When you say everybody is a little neurodivergent, then what you're doing is saying, okay, now you're silenced because I felt left out, and that sounds cuter to say neurodivergent than that you have borderline personality disorder, or you know, like
Yeah, now we're talking,
I'm seeing that in some of these chat rooms, and I'm like, that's cute, but also we have legitimate struggles that you don't experience, and you can treat a mood disorder with the proper medication and CBT.
Right.
Down syndrome is a chromosome issue, which is a medical issue, and it's like not the same umbrella, and
Right.
it's super frustrating. And I know that's my tism, that it's like this justice factor that I want to be understood and I want other people to understand. Yeah, sorry.
Well, and there's an aspect of it where, you know, in our work, we help individuals understand, but we also, right, we know that there are a lot of things we could get worked up about, and part of that is then when I step into that room, they are where they're at with the information. Because one of my gripes is, like, worked in treatment for a decade. An ADHD diagnosis was a vie and a manipulation almost 99% of the time to get a stimulant.
Yeah.
Without even knowing which one they would be prescribed. They didn't so much care, right? And there were legitimately people in there who needed it, but that gets lost in the mix when everybody is whining about it and throwing a fit. And I'll tell you what, just from the professional standpoint, if you're in those settings and you ever come across this, it's annoying. Fucking stop. You know? It's annoying. Yeah.
Yes.
Look, we'll still give you the care, but my God, some of those behaviors can get real. It's attention seeking, you know? And that's what I was kind of hearing when you were talking about, like, some of those reactions on the internet. It's all like, how do I get to be part of this conversation? It's like, hey, just relax.
You can have a conversation that's about you. Like, there's like, I'm not saying mental health issues, like, are not important, because that's what I was accused of for literally just asking, like, oh, cool, have you done research that I could, like, see brain scans for this that you're spewing to everybody? But if you just want to be a part of a club, which, trust me, it's not fun, again, you're silencing us. And I think just educating everybody the best that we can. Like, I love to learn. If you tell me, like, you're incorrect, I learned this thing, I did a study, I'd be like, that's awesome, I would love to talk about it. But I think we're in a society right now where it's like, oh, you think differently than me? I'm going to discredit you as quick as I can. Like, I'm going to smear your name, I'm going to make you look stupid, and then nobody's going to want to listen to you. Right. And it's for having a different opinion.
And that's definitely the internet in a nutshell.
Yes.
Yeah.
I got to stay off it.
Yeah, you know, we post our stuff and then I don't look at it. You know, you know, you should see the comments on TikTok. It cracks me up. Like, and then like I'll see the notification come through. I'm like, whoa, and I'll just, you know, they say engagement is how you grow the audience. Some of these comments I'm not engaging with. No, thank you.
No, and what was it? Was it Tyler, the creator, recently was like, not everybody should have podcasts. Well, he said he took it to the extreme. He's like, we should outlaw podcasts. I don't think everybody should be outlawed, but I knew what he was saying. Like, there's people with mics that should not always have mics.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a whole culture of, and this is the popular culture, right? This is the stuff that goes viral where it's like they're kind of just talking about nothing. You know, which any podcast is going to have. We're shooting the shit about a lot of nothing tonight too, but you know, it's like I'll see some of those shorts come through. I'm like, what are these people talking about? You know, or they're misrepresenting information, which is, you know, there are things that are more dangerous than that, but it's like, I don't know, you can obstruct somebody getting support by doing that kind of stuff.
That is where it becomes dangerous. Like, people can wake up tomorrow and call themselves a dinosaur if that is what they identify as. But when it comes to mental health and you're telling people, no, it's all the same. Well, each thing requires a different type of treatment.
Yeah.
And like, you get on TikTok and everybody's an expert now, which it's like a double-edged sword. I love that people are talking about it. I love that there's mental health TikTok, and a lot of people come to me because they're like, because I ask them every time, like, what made you want to get tested? Yeah. And 9 times out of 10, they're like, well, I was watching TikTok. And I'm like, yep. But there's so much crossover in diagnosis. And another thing that's annoying is watching people that don't have expertise in ADHD advertise that they do because it's trendy. Right. And then I'll talk to people and I'm like, okay, is it combined type? Is it hyperactive type? Is it just attention? And most of the time they don't know. They're like, they never asked me those questions. I'm like, well, what kind of assessment was that? Like, what were y'all working on?
Right.
What coping skills did you walk away with?
Yeah, and a lot of times the answer, and especially in the last 5-6 years, is there was no assessment. This was a therapist who watched TikToks on their own.
Or took a 2-hour CEU and became an expert.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. You know, and it's interesting because breaking down the different types even of ADHD kind of highlights our point of, in the beginning when I was asking about like just the breakdown of different terms that we hear in our society. There's so much nuance to this where we wouldn't expect anyone on the internet to have that information, but deeper assessment is needed. And so listen, if you came across this because you saw the title and this is something that interests you, it's like, well, you need to sit down with someone like Cassandra and get an assessment. Because one of the things about ADHD as well that always fascinates me is if you think about it like epidemiology, you know, if we go from a percentage that's been researched for 50 years and this is the bottleneck, and then that blows open, then what it means is that what's happening isn't real, you know, statistically. It's just not the way it works. It's not some airborne disease. Yeah. Right. These are very significant diagnoses. And I think the paradox is that a lot of people get missed actually when stuff like that happens.
Yes, and that is like my fear. Or then when it is oversaturated, then you have the people that are like, oh, everybody has it now. It's not a problem. And it's like, not everybody does. There's crossover in so much stuff that they'll hear like, oh, I have this one thing in common. Or you have the couples that are now influencers that, and I watch them, the reels where there's like there's a British husband and wife that are both like odd HD and they post about each other's quirks and they're on point. But everybody can't be that. And that was their journey and they're trying to jump on the bandwagon. And then, like you said, some people that maybe don't have the symptoms that fit what the reels are about, because and women, we present differently. And my dissertation that I'm working on is this intersection of odd HD women, late diagnosed, with PTSD, because we have really, really high rates of PTSD. And that's another term that gets overused and saturated all the time. And they're like, everybody's got trauma. Everybody's got PTSD. Everybody does not have PTSD. Right. Like, we may all have shitty experiences that we went through at different points, but like true PTSD, like, I always overshare. I am dealing with it because my trauma is not other people's problems to handle. So I'm getting EMDR as well. Shout out to Jennifer Miller. She is the shit as a therapist. If you need somebody, like, she's not neurodivergent, but she gets it, and she holds space for me. And I've been through a lot of stuff. I'm not going to trauma dump on y'all, but like when I'm slipping, I was misdiagnosed for a long time. They kept saying it was bipolar because what I thought was happening is I thought I was having a manic episode. What it was is I hit my polyvagal threshold and I was disassociating. And
let's define that
sorry.
word just for a moment.
Yes, sorry.
When big ones come up, we want to define them. I've had a long track record of like, oh, I'm tracking with you. I know what these things are. But then I'll get the questions after like, what does that mean? So when you hit that threshold, the polyvagal threshold, why don't we define that a little bit for those who might be interested?
It's basically like you hit the limit of what your nervous system can handle. And your brain it's amazing in that it will like, okay, bitch, we can't handle anymore. Like, and you tap out. And because when I was describing it, I was like, me and my husband were fighting. We were screaming at each other. We're walking down Ocean Boulevard. Some dude's yelling. Like, the last thing I remember is some guy being like, shut the fuck up, because we're fighting loudly in the street, like, why trash? And I reached some point where it's like, it goes blurry from here up. I don't know why. I could see your feet clearly, but it would be like, I'm stepping out of the room. I am checked out, but my body is ready to fight. I am in full fear, and I'm ready to like attack because I feel like I'm under attack. And I didn't realize I had PTSD until I moved in with my partner. And he's an amazing man. I love him. I know in his soul he's good, but he has unresolved childhood trauma. I had unresolved PTSD I was unaware of, and our traumas have just been doing this. Like, we almost split up I don't know how many times, and we're not even mad at each other. It's trauma reactions just colliding. And sorry, that was like an ADHD way around all.
No worries.
But like, when people are like, everybody's got PTSD, I'm like, no, you don't have debilitating moments where you lose reality and then your body's been in fight or flight and you've got to like come down from that, and then the whole next day it feels like an emotional hangover. You're not sobbing in front. Like, I am a domestic violence survivor. My husband does not want to hurt me. He screams over dumb shit. Like, just, he doesn't, like most men in society, y'all were not like walked through, here's how you share your emotions.
Yeah.
Here's your coping skills. He grew up like trying to figure out how to be a man without a dad there. And so like, he has no coping skills and is neurodivergent. My daughter has ADHD, and then I'm neurodivergent as well. And so when we're all dysregulated, everybody's dysregulated together. Like,
yeah, which it's interesting too, because there's the thread for human beings. When the home gets dysregulated, it's dysregulated. That doesn't then automatically mean here's the diagnosis, here's your label, here's this, right? I think, right, the difference between having a traumatic, right, upbringing or experiences and PTSD is a wide margin. All right. You highlighted some really good pieces there too of why that is like the derealization, depersonalization, your nervous system completely on fire, emotional hangovers that you're not sure how to connect, or even that you should. These are really important distinctions in something like PTSD versus we're doing some inner child work because you had a jarring childhood experience. Maybe you went through a bunch of moves as an army brat and no one ever explained to you why, so you were piecing things together and that jarred the way that you view the world and you have a lack of trust. These are traumatic experiences that
form attachment disorders, but not PTSD.
Bingo. Yeah. Which is a whole nother branch we could click into. But staying on our topic, right?
I probably am not on topic of any
we're doing our best. We're having fun. Music.
Yes.
Why don't we jump to that for a minute? So you had moved out to California.
Yes.
To pursue some music. Tell me about that.
So I have been singing my whole life. I have got to sing at every single one of like I would like to say classic, historic, like major places around Dallas. And that is really fucking cool. Around, I would say, I think I was 29 and I was teaching, and on spring break, I went out to this like writing retreat. And I lost like 10 pounds in a week, and I didn't change anything. It was just like the stress was gone, and I got to focus on music for just a whole week, which has never happened because I've worked since I was 14. So it was like I had a chance to just chill and do what I wanted. And we wrote songs every day. I kept those connections, but when I came back, I told my husband, like, I can't live here anymore. I can't stay in Texas. And I knew I had to convince him. So I took him on a, like, we saved our money. We went from like, I did a whole West Coast trip, and we went from like Washington and then like down, and just really cool shit happened the whole time. And then we ended up in Long Beach, only because like, he was like, well, Snoop Dogg's from here. I'm like, yes. So that was, he's a old school DJ. And so like, that was our reasoning for ending up there. And then he fell in love with it too. And we were just like, okay, why can't we do this if everybody else can? So like, we both quit our jobs, and we're told how stupid we were because he was like 34, 35 at the time, and I was turning 30. And they're like, who quits their job and leaves their hometown and just goes in midlife? Or I don't know if 30's midlife. I don't know when I'll die.
Yeah, I think it's, we're young, but it's close.
Yeah. We packed all my shit in the Corolla and we went, and like, we drove Lyft with that same Corolla, splitting shifts. And we had a 1-bedroom that had like a lofted area that was open. So we would get sleeping bags and sleep up in the lofted area, and then Airbnb out our bedroom on the weekends. And we could make like $500 just renting the room out. And I went to every single writing camp, like anything free. I was just like shoving my way into rooms. And because my whole life, it was like, I'm too fat, I'm too loud, like I'm too awkward, I'm not supposed to be here, I'm the broke like in my head was this narrative of like, poor white trash, you're not supposed to be here, you're not good enough to be in this room. And that 4 years that we were out there, like, I got in rooms and met my heroes. I'm not famous, like I maybe make $100 a year off my streaming, but like what I learned and what I got to experience is magical. Like, that again, sorry, that was like
no worries. Long Beach is a cool city.
I fucking love it.
We were chatting earlier. I'm about 15 minutes from there is where I was living before I moved out here to Texas, and I would go to Long Beach for a lot of different reasons. So I'd go to the aquarium, and
it's a cool aquarium.
Yeah, I enjoy it. That's that was my vibe, and that in those areas, the amusement park type of stuff. I do a lot of that kind of stuff on the weekends and such. But the music scene there is popping, always has been.
They've got like Long Beach and LA. I feel like it's the rival of like Fort Worth and Dallas in a way, as far as music. Just like, they've got Long Beach pride. But they've got some really cool. It felt like Dallas as far as like, I found a jazz bar that had like blues, and I was missing that part of home. Like, my favorite parts of Texas are food and music. So not the politics.
Sure.
But yeah, that was. Being a musician has put me in rooms where I also have like weird, like my best friend was around a lot of dancers, and so I would go to the strip club to get my hair done before I went and did shows. And then I'm just like this awkward fat white girl with a guitar, and then they'd throw me in a lineup with like all these rappers, and it's like, what are you doing here? But it somehow worked. And then I learned that I don't ever want to be like a famous singer. That is beautiful for other people. My autism, I wouldn't have been able to handle it. Like, I can put on the act and be social and walk in a room and talk to people, but inside I'm just like, I really want to run to the car and like not talk to anybody. But then that comes across as like, oh, she's an arrogant bitch. And it's like, no, I'm really tired and I don't know how to say words anymore, and I want to go lay in my bed for 2 days. Like, so I kind of stepped away from, I stepped away from performing completely, but then I've gotten to do work with artists and with producers and be their therapist. And that I love because I get it. They don't have to like explain who they are or their lifestyle for me to work on trauma with them.
Yeah, and I noticed a lot of that in your bio, and we kind of chatted as well about some of those experiences working with entrepreneurs, working with artists, and there definitely is an aspect of it where much like any diagnostic criteria can be different, certain types of people and the populations that you work with are different, and working with artists is definitely one of those. I have a few that have been impacted by the family disease of addiction, but they are different distinctly from like the lawyers that I work with, right? And it's night and day, see the difference right away, even just in the way they present themselves. I have a few that pop into my mind, like one of my lawyers, she comes in Harvard educated, you know, very well put together. And I have this other dude, very bright, very intelligent, one of the best like painting artists I've seen in a, like, just for my taste, right, in a long time. And he comes in just raggedy, you know, chilling, long hair, you know, what's up, dude, you know, that kind of deal.
I love it.
Yeah.
I have some clients that like are dancers themselves, and so they want to like dress up and be cute, and because you know their expression, that like that's their identity. And sometimes we look awkward like in this like building in the middle of like close to University Park, and like it's just very dude bro-ish, and I definitely stick out. But I like to, like, I will go in dressed like this, or very rarely, I mean, very rarely do I put on, I'll put on like a suit jacket sometimes, but I like to create a comfortable situation where none of that shit matters. Like, none of the degrees matter, none of any of it. When you get to the core of it, we're all people, and we're all hurting, and we're all looking for somebody to help us like figure it out.
Yeah, in a way that that they can hear. That's really it. It's like, can I trust that you'll hear me and join me in this relationship in the way that I may not even know that I'm looking for, right? Which oftentimes can feel a little parental, but also boundaried, right? I'm all for I'm chilling. I'm wearing something comfortable. This is what I wore when I was doing my sessions today. You know, I'm not doing the whole cardigan sweater tied around my shoulders. Hell no. That is just not for me, man. No. Yeah. I think those days are dying anyway.
I think they are.
Some of the most educated people I've met in the field, you know, they're showing up, they got trucker hats on and, you know, and a flannel, you know.
And my whole life being told no matter what I did, it was unprofessional. Even when I was teaching, like I had an administrator, there were a few that were cool, but I had one that would scream at me down the hall in front of the kids and be like, Holt, take your nose ring out. And I'm like, how's that going to change how I teach this lesson? And then you've got the kids like, Miss, you're going to let her talk to you like that? I'm like, I just got punked out like in front of the whole class. But like every space I've been in, I'm always doing something wrong. And now that I'm old, I'm embracing like, I'm not doing shit wrong. I'm doing it differently. And like we have a second business that's a group practice in California. And we've been choosy about who we're bringing on as associates because we want it to look different than a lot of what I experienced in parts of my internship. Help them develop as therapists, and like, but I also require that they acknowledge the advocacy piece. And so we're looking at like, oh, you need an immigration evaluation? Like, we got you. By the way, Trump, I do immigration evaluations. If he sees this, I don't care.
Oh yeah,
come
he
for me.
definitely watches my podcast for sure. He's sitting in the Oval Office watching right now.
I'm looking at ways where like I can use my big mouth to like for good. And I know that I have to tone it back sometimes because like being out in Cali, people assumed I was ignorant because I had a Texas accent. I'm not kidding. Like there was a lot of like assuming I was stupid, like a country bumpkin. And I'm like, I didn't know I had an accent until I went out there. And then in the same, like I'll be in professional settings. I hate going to mixers because I feel like imposter syndrome of like, oh, I must not be as good as them because I'm not Ivy League. I'm not in a suit. Like I'm coming in there with pink hair and a nose ring. But I know my shit when it comes to trauma and neurodivergence.
Yeah, that's the beauty of education and reading the right literature. You know, when you extend your mind in the ways that we're supposed to, right, and keep an open mind, you can look however you need to. You know, that's my favorite part of the field. Is like one of my favorite supervisors ever. She had the craziest colored hair. You know, she was just rad. She was so fucking cool, and she was just her. You know, sure, she dressed nice and did all that for her, like her style, the way, but like when it came to the way she wanted to express herself, there were no fucks given those days. And I appreciated that, you know, as a dude covered in tattoos, you know, and maybe part of that too is I was moving and shaking in the recovery world. It's very acceptable to be covered in tattoos. But at the point in which I got my hands tatted and did all these kind of things, early in my, therapy career, it was like, I'm going to make my own path. I don't really care about what conference I go to and the way somebody wearing a suit without hand tattoos is going to look at me. I just don't care. You know, I've read the books, and, you know, time would probably show in a lot of those realms as well with some of the places I've spoken and gone. It's like, I understand this stuff better than you. It's why I'm talking to you about it, you know? So you go ahead and judge, that's fine.
And you're in the same room as them. I think they forget that.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I think, a beauty as well of some of the discussions that we have in settings like this is like, I bring you on because I want to learn about your background, your expertise. I want to hear what you have to say. You know, it's like, I know things, sure, right? But I want to learn more. And I heard that in what you were sharing too. It's like, that's where you have conversation.
Yes, we all have our little niche. And like, I love getting with other therapists and hearing like, I know EMDR, I know CBT, and then I bring in expressive arts with what I'm doing. But like my business partner, ACT is her jam. Like, so when we train people, she's focusing on that, and she likes like kids in their 20s of like transition, helping people figure out careers.
Yeah.
And then we have somebody that specializes in offering services for the trans community. And then like I have one of my associates is first generation, and that's her passion, is like she wants to offer therapy to first generation with immigrant parents. And then I have another associate that's bilingual, so we're offering Spanish and English services, but specifically she's like wanting to target the Latina community that's neurodivergent, because a lot of times overlooked. Like,
well, there was a point too I wanted to make sure I asked you about as well, because I think it's an important one. We learn a little bit about it. You know, I could read more about it if I had more time, but now that I have someone who probably knows a lot more than me about it, women who are in these diagnostic realms, who've experienced trauma, we're told in the research, right? I mean, if you take a course on it or you do a CEU, that a lot of them are experiencing sexual trauma,
yes,
physical trauma, in those realms, right? Like, obviously, when you're in those realms, you're going to talk about spiritual and emotional. Those are kind of like, it's kind of like a trail, right? It's like, maybe you experienced this and this, but if you're here with physical and sexual, you've experienced the other two. But what I think is really important to call out is that the reason it gets missed is because of the diagnostic impressions. These young ladies even if they had the chance, they don't know how without the support to speak out. And I'm curious what you might say to them and how you would maybe educate others around this of like, how do we help support that and help these young ladies? What do they need to be aware of and hear?
I would definitely say, like, if you are struggling at all and you're curious, start with an assessment and look for somebody that is neuro-affirming and culturally aware, because there's all these nuances depending. We all have our own journeys, but most tests are normed on straight white males, and y'all present differently than we do. Yeah. And women with trauma, well, any person who's traumatized is now predispositioned to endure more trauma. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole lot of reasons for that, and they vary by person. Mm-hmm. I would say, don't suffer in silence. If you need help, please reach out. And I think we get missed with neurodivergence. One of the problems is trusting people's intentions or trying to figure them out. I struggled with that greatly, and I ended up dating a lot of pieces of shit. I can joke about it, but I literally almost died. And that's what I'm getting EMDR for, because I believed a sociopath. I believed because he was a musician and we met in a space that was around my friends that it was meant to be, and we wrote a song together. Oh my God, he's such an amazing guy. No, he fucking wasn't. Eric, I hope your dick falls off. So if he sees this, I looked him up and he did time in New Mexico State.
Yeah,
so.
How's his dick doing? Did it fall off or not?
He saw me coming. Yeah. I had just gone through a really traumatic and violent sexual assault. And he saw somebody he could take advantage of. And me, I was believing oh my God, he's a good person. Everything he's saying is true to me. No, it's not. And that is a huge, huge not all men are predators. I'm not
Yeah,
saying
no,
all
no.
y'all are, but there are some. And women, we are at risk just existing. Like, y'all don't have to be taught, don't roll your window down enough that a hand could fit through, you know, like things like that. So we're already at risk. And then you take that neurodivergence that almost makes us like trusting like a child. And I'm not saying I'm a child, but I believed I took it at face value. I thought, because I'm being honest and I tell you what I'm thinking, that everybody else does.
Yeah, that just by default you'll do the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what sets you up for trauma.
Yeah. And I thought that was a good distinction too. It's like, because that is how the internet reacts. It's like, oh, not every man. It's like, well, look, man, every woman, right? It's really, there are a lot of sensitive topics where when you get into the distinctions of differences in people, there are different things that we are taught. And one of the things that men never really have to be taught is that, hey, you can walk outside at night, you're going to be fine, right? So we don't have to be taught about how to keep ourselves safe walking outside at night, right?
Yes.
And I just don't think the average conversation in society is equipped to extend to those understandings, unfortunately, until they've experienced those things.
I think that's the problem with the entire United States right now, is that things aren't a problem until they're a problem for them. And whereas like us in helping fields and people that aren't pieces of shit, you're like, you care about others and you care what happens to them and you care about understanding their journey. And we just need to be understood more. And I think there's a lot of undiagnosed women still out there that are maybe not finding out till they're moms. And the sensory overload, it's not the same as like, yes, kids can be annoying and loud, and it can be debilitating, like rocking back and forth. And I have to have noise canceling headphones almost exclusively when I get off work. My husband, God bless him, he understands. Like, I don't know how we found each other. Well, I do know, Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, he got a Kleenex for a woman, and I was like, oh, that's really nice. Like, that's how shitty the dudes were I was dating, that it like moved me that this man handed somebody a Kleenex when they were crying. But he gets me, and he not lets me be me, because I'm gonna do what I want to do, but he gives me space to like be neurodivergent. Like, if I put the headphones on and I'm doing notes and shit, he understands, like, I'm gonna give her space, just like I understand, you know, his quirks. Not all women are lucky to be in relationships where they're understood. Yeah. And I would say to moms that are struggling and it feels like you're dying on the inside sometimes, like, don't be afraid to admit you need help. It doesn't mean you're a bad parent. It means that like you have sensory overload and you are close to a shutdown. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is a consistent message in this realm. We've talked about it a million times on this show with whatever the topic is, that if you're struggling, this doesn't make you bad or wrong. It's not something to deepen in shame about. It's something to understand. We're going to seek to understand you, unless you're Eric, and then we hope you're dick. You heard it here first. Sorry, Eric.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That made my heart happy. Thank you.
I gotcha. Yeah. But I like that message. It's like, this doesn't make you a bad parent, doesn't make you a bad partner, doesn't make you a bad person, right? These aren't objectively bad things, which is another part of the stigma that we face a lot with any mental health diagnoses, but especially the spectrum, especially neurodivergence, is, oh, that's not normal. It's like, well, you know, maybe we don't want to go so much down like, oh, well, what is normal, right? But it's like, that's part of the conversation, is these people are not abnormal.
No,
right?
Just different.
Different.
Yeah. I approach problem solving different, and I didn't realize that. Mind blown the other day, I just learned that some people don't have inner dialogue. I was like, say what? Because like, this bitch in my head is loud. Like, how do you not have, like, nothing? There's nothing? Yeah. That blows my mind.
Yeah. I remember hearing about some of that stuff early in the field, and like, nah, No. All right. But that's one that's coming up more and more too, which makes me wonder. I'm just going to go on record and state my curiosity. Is it with all of the electronic and internet stimulation constant in the world, if there's just no need for some of these people, like they're just constantly stimulated, the part of me wonders if that's a factor, because it's only, maybe you would agree with this, like the last 10, 15 years, that's become more of a conversation, whereas I don't remember hearing anything about that back in the day. Nothing.
None.
Yeah.
And I think that's we need to talk about it online. There needs to be spaces for that. There needs to be, although I just got kicked out of the neurodivergent, clinicians supporting neurodiversity for pointing out that, I told her that I was scared. I saw the person that had the umbrella. She's not a clinician, but she's training us, which I don't understand. That's a whole other issue of I don't understand how that's happening. And I was just like, hey, your information's incorrect. And then I got attacked. And then I was like, wait, what? And then I got blocked for questioning. We're not going to get anywhere if every time somebody wants to present you with information and have a discussion, you block them or kick them out.
Yeah, if every time the reaction, not the response, if every time the reaction is to go to the deepest, darkest places in your mind about who that person is in the worst kind of ways, you'll never get anywhere.
No.
And you're assuming a lot about a person.
And then I was like, wait, if you're supposedly autistic, then you would also understand that we appreciate context and that we will nerd out and hyperfixate. And why would you not want to share what you deep dove into? What? Yeah. But that's just, everybody's different. And there's also, you can be autistic and be an asshole. You can be autistic and have a personality disorder as well.
Right.
Untreated trauma that you're taking out on everybody. So when they're I think the problem is people want to have a sense of belonging, which I understand, but it's advocate for your group that needs to be heard instead of coming at somebody else's group and muddying it up and telling us that we're not suffering. That's
yeah, it's degrading.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And you would think too, here's something I learned a long time ago working in a middle school autism classroom.
Oh my God, don't get me started on Texas and how they branch it.
You better, if you're going to go in to educate on something, you better know your shit, right? Because even a 12-year-old is going to, if they're on the spectrum, right, some of them are so fixated in the right ways of the knowledge that they'll call your ass out on stuff you've studied for years.
Yes,
and
they will.
Hilarious.
It's amazing.
It's fun. If you walk in prepared, it's hilarious, right? Because it's not personal. They love it, right? That's their way of having fun, the same way you'd play catch with a kid who loves baseball, And that I didn't know that walking into that classroom, but by the end of my first semester with them, if you will, that was one of the biggest life lessons I took away from working with that crowd, is that this is one way that human beings feel really stimulated in a positive way. If you can get information right and help them deepen the right information, they will eat it up like candy.
Yep. Yeah. You make it interesting and you make it relevant to them, which our curriculum does not in the state of Texas, by the way, in case you were wondering. I taught SPED, but there's 3 levels of it in Mesquite for high schools. And so you have the where it's half general education, half SPED, and there's 2 of us. I would be the SPED specialist, and there'd be a general education specialist. Then you have a caseload of kids that are in a general education classroom that get accommodations, and I go and I check on them. Then you have the self-contained classroom, which the problem is you're getting considered ID, which meaning it would have been previously known as not a correct term, mentally retarded. That, thank God, got changed, and it's intellectually disabled. But it means that your IQ is below 69. So that looked like I would read something to them, and then the next day they're not going to remember what I read to them. I didn't have a problem repeating it every day until they got it. Yeah. But what they would do is in Texas, they label every single person with any kind of issue, whether it be behavioral or mental health. SPED. And so then you get like 30 kids in a room, right? And some of them were taller than me, and a lot of them were in gangs, and that's great. But please don't put them all in the same room so I had my student on the spectrum, right? His jam was Greek mythology. Very specific, but he knew every damn thing that there was to know. And so we were reading, and it came on, I like ask a question. I'm never going to tell somebody they're wrong. Well, kid that got presented to me as Stabby, that is how it was introduced to me from my administrator, just got out of juvie, Stabby's coming in your classroom. Cool, thanks. All right, I'll be on the lookout. So this kid that knows everything about Greek mythology, I was trying to get somebody else other than him to get a chance to answer questions. Stabby kid that never is awake and never participates, for some reason this day wanted to share. And I'm like, fuck yes. All right, he's engaged. Wrong answer. But I'm not going to say it's wrong. I was like, good try. You're headed in the right direction. Well, then my kid on the spectrum is like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. And then he's like, bitch, what'd you say? And so then I'm breaking up a fight because this kid with behavioral issues should not be like in the same room. I ended up getting the kid on the spectrum moved to honors because it wasn't an intellectual issue that he has. Autism is not intellectual.
Right.
And I had to take him outside and have a communication lesson. I was like, you can't tell people they're stupid. He's like, but he's stupid. And I'm like, but you can't tell people they're stupid. And like, we went back and forth like this. He's like, but why? That is where autism becomes disabling. By the way, Elon Musk, we do not claim him. He's not one of us. He is a drug addict, and he's trying to. I have never once in my whole life done a Nazi salute because I'm autistic. So I would like to, on behalf of all the autism community, we disown Elon Musk. Just had to put that out there.
When I saw that narrative, I was like, man, that's real stupidity.
It is.
That's the narrative that gets pushed. Because if you have any intelligence at all, you know that autism has nothing to do with IQ. But society doesn't know that. And so again, here we are in the paradoxical, stupid fucking media. I mean, the media is stupid as fuck.
Very, very stupid. And so is like most of the people in the White House right now. It's kind of just making me want to smash my head in the wall. And I bet we have more degrees than them, but they're running a country.
Oh, I'm sure we do. I'm sure we do. I have a question I ask everyone when they're new on the show. If we were going to build a mental health amusement park and you got to build a ride there, what would the ride be? What would it do? What would you call it?
That's a good one. And see, the autistic part of me is like, no matter what I say, it's going to be wrong. And now I'm mad at you that I didn't know this question a week ago to plan it.
Tried to warn you.
It would have to be something that let me be weightless. You know how there's like deprivation tanks to give you like a break. So I don't care if you're like flying or floating. I'm going to need somebody to like help me engineer it because I don't know shit about engineering, but something that allowed me to float and like have no sensory input around me.
Then what
like
would you call it?
I don't know.
I don't think we could
Bubble
call
of
it
safety.
Bubble of safety.
We
I was
can't
gonna
call
say,
a ride fuck.
I would guess we could. Who's going to stop us?
I like that question.
Any last messages with a captive audience here?
Not all therapists are as obnoxious as me, so if you did not like this, like, don't let that turn you off from getting help. If you do need help, though, and you need somebody that thinks outside the box, like, we all need therapists. So, yeah, talk some shit out.
Yeah, except for you, Eric.
Except for Eric. He's destroyed many women's lives, and he has way too many children sharing his genetics.
Oof.
Sorry, I'll stop.
No worries.
He'll come sue me.
Ladies and gentlemen, Cassandra Holt Kimbell, licensed professional counselor. We break the cycle here every Friday night. We'll be back next Friday. Today's Thursday because tomorrow's the 4th of July. Hopefully you're going to blow shit up. Yeah. I know I will be.
Not for this country, but just for the sake of blowing shit up.
Fair enough. Yeah. Just stay away from blowing up a car, maybe.
Yes.
I don't know. No promises. We'll see you next week, Friday. We break the cycle here. We love you. Take care.
Yay. Nervous.